you'll remember the Genesis story. God creates man and woman, but before so, he created all of the earth, all of the heavens. Every single day, something else happened. And every single day, he said, and it was good. And it was all like a backdrop for planting man in this garden. Because he was going to put an image of himself against this whole backdrop of all creation. And that was us. That was Adam and Eve. And so he did. He created Adam, then he created Eve, and they were a perfect image of the triune God right here in this creation. In one moment, they're a perfect image of God. In just a moment, they are a miserable, crumbling, totally devastated failure, nowhere resembling the image of God. And what that tells me is they could remember what it was like. They knew what it was like 3 minutes ago. But now they're looking at what they're experiencing and they're going, God, what have we done? In an instant, they lost their glory. They remembered. And we have this same thing deep within us. While we don't have their remembrance of the image, we have something deep within us that knows there's something wrong. There's something missing. We don't quite measure up. And the Lord God made for Adam and for his wife garments of skin and clothed them. Now, I look at that verse and I thought, I wonder why. They had fig leaves. They were covered. Why did he choose garments of skin? And then it hit me. If you take a fig leaf off a plant, it doesn't die. If you take the skin off of an animal, it dies. There had to be shedding of blood to have a garment of skin. I really think this was a picture from the very beginning that God was saying, there's a redemption story going on. It's going to require a death. It's going to require shedding of blood, but I'm willing to do that. And that shedding of blood, that garment of skin, is going to be your redemption. That's going to be your covering. So God made animal skins to cover them. And then I'm thinking, okay, so here they are. They've got their fig leaves on. He's gone out, slain the animal. He's created the garments of skin. And then what? He says, okay, kids, let's take those fig leaves off. And I'm thinking, they're going, oh, wait a minute, that's the only thing covering me. He says, look, we've got to take the fig leaves off if we're going to cover you with a garment of skin. It has to happen. The fig leaves are not adequate. They don't provide for your full redemption. The garment of skin does. We have to come to a point of full exposure. You have to face your nakedness and your shame before you can experience the fullness of my love and my redemption for you. This process has to take place. But it's the best thing that can happen to you. And I think that's really true for each of us. We have come into this life and we've crafted some sort of an outer covering in practically every area of our life. We've crafted these outer coverings, and they're not adequate. And so God says, we've got to deal with these outer coverings, these facades that you've created, so that you can have my full redemption applied to your brokenness and to your shame. Yeah, He loves us no matter where we are in our life, what sin, what brokenness, what failure we've experienced, but He loves us way too much to let us stay there. So what does He do? Just go to the blank slide for now. He begins to engineer circumstances in our lives and allow circumstances in our lives that tear away at these fig leaves, that chip away at these outer facades, because he wants so much to get behind that veil. He wants to get behind this outer wall. He wants to come in and love the true us. And he is relentless at doing that. So he becomes the great destroyer of all of our attempts to hide our shame. Have you ever experienced that? I mean, really, haven't we all? 7 or 8 years ago, about 8 years ago, God invited me to fast. He invited me to fast from ministry. And at first it kind of scared me, but I thought, okay, this really is a father. He's inviting me to this. So I pretty much backed out of everything I was doing. No ministry activities whatsoever. And the first day I felt naked and ashamed because I had no tags to put on my lapel to say I'm doing okay. And actually for several years I was scared to death. Somebody was, "What are you up to, John?" "Nothing." "Where are you going to church?" "Nowhere." And a few people asked, "Well, are you still a Christian?" Yeah, I'm still a Christian. And about 2 months into this journey was the night, I call it my night of devastation. I won't go into the details, but I discovered something happening with one of my family members, and it was the big fig leaf that got completely ripped from the root. And it was so painful, I could not go to sleep. I wanted to cry myself to sleep. I couldn't even cry. I've never experienced pain like this. And so the next 2 or 3 days, I was journaling through this, praying through this, and God said, "What is this thing telling you? Why does this hurt so bad?" I didn't have a clue. And I wrote something in my journal about, well, maybe you're just showing me just how depraved this world is, and it's like, I know that's not the answer. So anyway, it was 5 years later that a friend of mine who's a believer had gotten into drugs. I didn't know how to talk to the guy, but I knew that Vern did. So I called Vern for some advice. And you remember that phone call?
Oh, I do.
And Vern starts talking about shame, about exposure, about all these things. And I'd heard some of this, but the way he presented it, it really began to click. And I was seeing it in my friend's life. I was understanding why these drugs had such a grip on him. And it was very enlightening. So hung up, that night went to bed. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and it hit me. That's what happened 5 years ago. That pain was my exposure. That pain was my outward facade being taken off. That's why it hurt so much. It hurt because I was so completely exposed. And it was so funny. I lay there in bed and I was rejoicing and saying, I don't measure up. I don't measure up. It's great. I don't measure up. I can't measure up. I never will. And at that point, I began to experience love at a deep level that I never dreamed possible. I want to quickly get to the next slide because I really want to send you guys out on your own with this. So go to the next slide. It should be, This is Revelation 3:20, or 3. And he took me to this verse in the midst of this awakening at night. And I began to think, okay, for you say, I am rich, I have prospered, I need nothing. Again, outward facade. You don't realize you're wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked. I'd counsel you to buy from me gold refined by fire, so that you may be rich. And then get this. and white garments, so that you may clothe yourself, and the shame of your nakedness may not be seen. He's offering garments that he will give us that will cover our shame. And then, I'll just skip the rest. Go to the next slide. This is what I call the grand invitation. Next slide. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I'll come into him, and eat with him, and he with me. Now, we've used that verse 1,000,000 times in evangelism. But what if what he's saying is, I'm standing at the door of your facade, and I want to come in. I want to come behind your facade, and I want you and I to fellowship together. I want to eat with you. I want to love you there. And when I love you there, you'll love me there. What if that's the door he's inviting us to open?